Meeting Tuesday, October the 11th. No one has signed up for open forum, so we will start the council meeting, please. Councillors, declarations of pecuniary interest, and general nature thereof. Seeing none, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as has been circulated? No amendments tonight, right, Madam Clerk? Councillor Marcus, thank you. Councillor Tom, second. Comments or questions? All in favour? It's carried. May I please have a motion to adopt the minutes from the council meeting of September the 27th and the special council public planning meeting of September the 28th. Councillor Abel, thank you. Councillor Marcus, thank you. Comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Presentations. Councillor Peary. With respect to item 16.
So, Mr. Mayor, I will be honest. It sort of skipped my mind over the last week to prepare a presentation to council, and I deeply regret that. However, with that said, if there are any questions about the FCM board meeting, I will do my best to answer them during the time of the report, and I'll provide more information if the report is pulled. Again, I apologize to everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Peary. There was an email that came through today. FCM was promoting a special Haitian relief fund. Do you have anything at this point on that, or maybe want to think about that when we come to it? Okay, all right, fair enough. Then we'll go to public service announcements. I think, Councillor Peary, I start with you this time.
None this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kim.
Nothing here.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. Just one for me. 2 weeks ago, my wife and I were blessed to welcome our first baby into our family, and so I've been a bit sparse at council meetings since then, but I would just like to publicly recognize and offer both my wife and my sincere gratitude to both the midwives of York Region and South Lake Regional Health Centre. We received excellent care throughout the entire process, and we are truly thankful to all the midwives, nurses, and doctors who helped us through. And that's it.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations once again. Your last sleepless night full sleep night for quite a while. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. There's really not much. I attended the King Township Soup Festival. It's an outdoor event that I go every year, and they had 38 different soups to try. It's a lot of fun. But I was met by a challenge by Mayor Pellegrini and Councillor Vaya Eek that this council would send an entry for soup next year, at least one. So I just mentioned that, and I assured them that we would have representation from Aurora there.
I read a story once about stone soup. Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one. I believe we're all aware that the provincial government has begun their review of the OMB. They are going to be having town hall meetings, and the one that is closest to us will be held in Newmarket on October 18th at Trinity United Church, which is at 461 Park Avenue. And residents are encouraged to RSVP online, and they can do that at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing webpage. I guess we'll put that, if we could put that up possibly on our town site or social media, that would be great for residents to know. Yeah, that's great news.
Thank you. Just a couple. With the Halloween coming up, there is special procedure for disposing of pumpkins. And that will be in this week's and I believe next week's notice board, as well as on our website. So would appreciate if people would check that. Our budget is starting this Saturday, starting right here at 9 o'clock. And we certainly wish to hear from our residents whenever possible. There will be an opportunity for residents to come and give us some suggestions. We also have our online survey, aurora.ca budget, and we are going to pick a winner from there. $250 right out of Mr. Elliott's pocket. No, he's writing a check right now for the winner of that survey, or winner of the contest, pardon me. We have an obsolete electronic and gently used clothing. We have an e-waste and clothing recycling events. Items are being accepted Saturday, October the 24th, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the new Joint Operations Center located on Industrial Parkway North. And there's more information on that, aurora.ca/ewaste. The Haunted Forest is coming up. That's always a pretty fun event. October the 29th at Shepherd's Bush, there is a $5 wristband. The wristband policy is in effect. You can get those here. You can get them at the Family Leisure Complex, the SARC, and that's it. And it always sells out. So it's a very popular event, aurora.ca/events. Aurora Public Library, the open house, starts next week. The kickoff is Monday night, and I hear on good authority that they have cake. So that's always a good reason to show up. And last but not least, we do have events to help you with your children when there's a PA day. So the next one coming up, which is Friday the 28th, there is some public skating at the Stronach Aurora Recreation Complex. Entry is $2.75 per person, and there's more information again on our website. So, and last but not least, congratulations once again to Councillor Tom. It's a very exciting event in your life. And I'm a little biased, but daughters are best. Oh, okay, I'm a lot biased. Determination of items requiring separate discussion. Councillor Maracas.
I'll get 1 sub 3.
Okay. Councillor Thompson.
I'm fine, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Abel.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's the recommendation from the 150 ad hoc. Was it part of the committee?
That's 18. 1 sub 18.
1 sub 18, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Tom. Councillor Kim. Councillor Perry. All right, then I have, Madam Clerk, there's anything to be pulled for? Okay, Council, the clerk's just advising me that on item 1 sub 11, which is the proposed bell tower, there was some additional information asked for from Mr. Ramuno. He doesn't have that yet, so it's suggested that we defer that until October the 25th. We need a motion for that. So Councillors Thompson and Abel deferring item 1 sub 11 to October the 25th. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. So it's deferred. So I have 2 items then that have been pulled. 1 sub 3, the Metrolinx temporary parking accommodation, and 1 sub 18, the Canada 150 committee. Councillor Thompson.
Can I just get clarification? 1 sub 18, the Canada 150th, the GC recommendation was to refer it to budget?
Budget.
Thank you.
Oh, then I'll take it off.
Okay. In that case, we just have 1 sub 3. If there's nothing else, may I please have a motion to accept the items not requiring separate discussion? Councillor Perry, Councillor Tom, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Guess I don't need to poll the audience, do I? 1 sub 3, Councillor Maracas.
I'll move as is.
Thank you very much. Second, please. Councillor Perry, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm reading this report, and on page 2, it talks about how we requested that they limit the use of the church parking to 6 months and that it's been denied. And so I'm a little discouraged at the fact that Metrolinx has pretty much outright denied it without us even giving them any other alternative parking spots. So I threw you to Mr. Simonoskis. Did we offer them any type of alternative parking and they denied those alternative spots, or is it they're just denying it outright?
Mr. Simonoskis, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the conversation that I had with the senior project lead for this section of the project was that they're not going to give up the access to that parking lot unless they're having confirmation of other parking spaces required. And their comment also was that they're going to need more parking anyway. So even if we offer them parking, they still may need additional parking, which they would stay within this lease. So they're open to discussion. It's just they're not willing to give anything up if they have it in their, within their program at this point in time.
Counselor?
I'll be quick. I guess I'm a little bit disappointed with Metrolinx as far as the conversations while I was sitting there seemed that they would, limit it to that 6 months if we offered up those alternatives, and that doesn't seem like that's the case. So I just want to reiterate that I'm disappointed.
Counselor Tom?
Thank you, Mayor Daw, and because I was away last week, I would have asked this then, but one of the main concerns of residents was that there was lighting concerns with lighting at night. My question is, the report indicates that lighting is not going to be installed, but is there lighting there now? There is.
There is lighting in the parking lot. I'm not sure if it's functioning or not, but there's lighting in the parking lot.
So thank you, Mayor Daw. So it says that they're not going to install any new lights, but are they going to be using the lights that they currently have later in the evening? I mean, the main concern was that the lights are going to be on at night. Or so, I mean, that's what the residents came forward and asked. So I'm just asking, I appreciate they're not going to build anything more, but are they going to keep the schedule the same?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can inquire. I mean, I have been to the site different times in the day just to see how it's being utilized. I haven't noticed the lights being on at this point in time, but I can inquire as to what the status of that is. I do know that they said they weren't going to be adding any lights to the parking lot. If we have any complaints, I'm sure they'll be quick to respond. I haven't had any calls as well as to how if there's any lighting interferences or whatnot. So I'm not aware of any concerns, but if there is anything, we definitely can follow up with them.
Counselor Thompson?
Thank you. Through you to our CAO. Doug, initially when this happened, staff were great to provide members of council with a brief update about how the transition was happening and what kind of traffic was going through to the parking lot. But we haven't seen much since then. Can staff continue to provide periodic updates in terms of how this is going, especially as winter comes along and conditions sort of change? It would be good for us to be proactive in that sense, to be in the loop with regards to how this continues to work itself out, or at least, whether or not there are any future potential issues or impacts coming up that we get some notice.
Mr. CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely will endeavor to provide more information to Councillor more regularly.
Any other comments or questions on this item? I'll just make one note. I had a quick chat with a representative of Metrolinx today on a slightly different subject, but it deals with parking. Metrolinx announced in October 2014 that they were building 2 new stations on the Richmond Hill line, one at Stouffville Side Road, Highway 47, and the 404, and the other at Bloomington. The Stouffville Side Road station with 850 spots parking spots, is still on target for the end of 2016. And the Bloomington station is still on target for the end of 2018. So different train, slightly different times, but just adding that capability should take some of the pressure off the Aurora station. So that's just a quick update from that perspective. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Abel.
Mayor Dodd, just quickly, I think I remember looking at the York Region agenda recently, and it talked about the Mulock station. Can you provide any context? Was there sort of some timelines or what it was about? There wasn't much in the report at all.
Unfortunately, Councillor Thompson, there are no timelines at this point. It was announced at the end of June by Minister Del Duca that Kirby Road, Mulock, and I can't remember where in Innisfail, but 3 new stations would be built on the Barrie line. But at this point, there is no timing, so I'm sorry, there's nothing more I can add to that. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mayor Joe. Along the same lines, the Richmond Hill station is a different track than the Barrie corridor. And if I'm right, it's more direct and a quicker route down to Union Station.
That I don't know.
It does go right through the midi.
Councillor Kim is a regular user of the
Councillor Kim, could you help us? I know the Barrie corridor winds its way all the way over west
Toronto,
and then comes through York and then bends. It's a lengthy process.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I've taken the Richmond Hill line, and it's a shorter distance than from Aurora or King City, for that matter, if you go equally. But because it winds through the Don River, it doesn't go nearly as fast as the Barrie route, so it actually takes 42 minutes to go down to Union Station. In Aurora, it's probably an extra 15 kilometers or so, but it's 52 minutes or 50 minutes right now.
Thank you, Councillor. No other further comments or questions? All in favor of receipt report? Contract, that is carried. Thank you very much. That ends the items requiring separate discussion. We'll move to motions. And Councillor Abel, if I may pass the chair to you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'll ask for a motion to be put on.
I will move as is.
Seconder? Councillor Kim, thank you. Mayor Dahl, we'll let you begin the proceedings here.
Thank you, sir. Some councillors will recall that we had a discussion last term on anti-whistling, as well as the regular conversations that go on with some of our residents. With the advent of the RER program, the increased train volume, and with some upcoming changes from Transport Canada with respect to via rail and crossings, safety standards being upgraded, I thought it'd be an appropriate time for staff to at least start the investigation again as to what may or may not be within the art of the possible in terms of looking at whistling cessation. And really that's it. I'm just asking for staff to start to look into this process and see what they might be able to report back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Comments, questions? Councillor Perry?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And through you to Mr. Mayor, could you elaborate on the Via Rail changes that are taking place?
Mr. Mayor?
I could if I had my computer in front of me. It's all online. But they're looking at the whole issue of grade crossings versus grade separated crossings and how to look at the safety standards. Are they current? Are they well maintained? Are they up to date for current traffic conditions? It is all online, and I'm happy to distribute that link to council either probably sometime tomorrow.
Thank you. And just, I think from the beginning, my biggest concern with whistle cessation is really that it's a town-wide payment for something that would only really benefit a small group of residents. I'm still not sold that it's needed. I'd be happy to consider it if we were going to put a special levy on the table to pay for these changes depending on what the price comes in. But at this point in time, I'm not going to vote in favor of this.
Mr. Mayor, there is no financial implication apart from the staff report. Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. As part of the report, will staff be looking at other GTA municipalities that may or may not have implemented such a program and bringing forward some of the practices that they're using?
Mr. Simonauskas?
I was asking Mayor Dahl, but fine, I'll direct it to
All eyes are pointing there. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there are a number of municipalities. Markham in particular has moved fairly along their cessation program. So we would definitely look at what's interesting with this process is actually when we were looking at it a few years ago, we were somewhat leading it as well. So there's some back and forth. But as Mayor Dahl mentioned, there's been some changes, some opportunities for improving the process, and we definitely want to leverage any experiences other municipalities have experienced.
Councillor? Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. Mr. Mayor, I'll pass the chair back to you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Maracas.
Move as is.
Thank you. Second, please. Councillor Kim. Councillor Maracas.
You know, this is pretty much, I think, straightforward. I think it's about cleaning up some of our policies and instituting a new policy and giving staff the tools required to, look at how our buildings, especially within our downtown core, a lot of them stay vacant or derelict, and how we can encourage absentee landlords to kind of give them a push and to make sure that they're either upkept, so they're not an eyesore within the downtown core, or to help promote them and get them leased or not to be vacant anymore as soon as possible. So that way they're not a blight on within the town. A lot of the other aspects when it comes to a vacant and derelict building bylaw that a lot of municipalities have put it in place for is there is issues with fire risk for health issues. But the main one is to help regenerate and renew the areas that they are in. And so I think it's our job to help push forward and initiate and give staff those tools to be able to help, so we don't have as many vacant and derelict buildings within our downtown core. As I was walking down there a couple of weeks ago and meeting with some of the business owners, and some of the buildings there are in rough shape. They're vacant, and they need to be pushed to be reopened. A lot of times, the way I look at it is that these absentee landlords, they own the buildings. They don't have a mortgage on it right now, so they have no problem sitting on it and allowing it to sit there. And they're in no rush. They're in no rush to sell it. They're looking for the best price, and I don't begrudge anyone for that. And I think that it's their property. They can do as they please to a certain extent. But I think it's our job to make sure that within the town we have a way to make sure that everything looks good. I know we take pride in our town, and I think this helps. A lot of the other municipalities, Winnipeg being one of the major ones that instituted this, and I know that their municipal act is different from ours, but the ones that they put forward, like the one that they put forward, they actually, at the end of the day, they can actually take possession of the property. And I know that's not something that we could get to, but Toronto looked at Winnipeg's model and wanted to institute Winnipeg's model as closely as possible. And I think that's something that we should do too, is look at Winnipeg's model and see what we can do within our municipal act and what it will allow us to do to closely align to what they've done, because they've had lots of success in tamping down on how many properties stay vacant and how long they stay vacant for. So that's it for right now.
Thank you. Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Daw, and thanks, Councilor Marakis, for bringing this forward. I guess my question really is not necessarily that, this isn't a good idea, but it just seems that we're asking for a bylaw to be brought back for our consideration. But so I guess I have just a couple of questions for Councilor Marakis. I don't think it's in there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is this referring to commercial buildings? Is it referring to residential houses within the town? I mean, it's not specific, so that's a concern I have. And yeah, I mean, for me, I would much rather see what other municipalities are doing first and take a look at what works and what doesn't work. I mean, we're kind of giving staff, a pretty unspecific direction to come back with a very specific bylaw. So I guess perhaps if you could elaborate a little bit more on some of the details behind what you thought about, residential versus commercial, and any other details you could wrap around it that would make it easier for me to understand, that'd be great.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair. Like I said, many municipalities, so Hamilton's got it, Welland's got it, Bradford's got it, London, Mississauga, they've all done it, and it speaks to, for me personally, and I didn't put it in there to specify, but it speaks to all properties. You as well as I know that, we see how many times with the heritage residential buildings, they get left sitting there. And there's big issues with it. It's what we call demolition by decay. They let them sit there and they could become decrepit and say we have no choice but to demolish it. And I think that's what this would help prevent in that aspect of it. It would also help with preventing on the commercial side. I know one specifically that I look at is the one that's beside Caruso Flowers. That one is, you walk by it, it's in rough shape. And they say that they're doing some work and they're working on it, but realistically, are they doing anything? And that's what this would do, is it looks at it, it gives them a timeline. Is if it's vacant for 30 days, most of them, if you look at their bylaws, if it's vacant for 30 days, there's certain aspects that they have to meet, requirements that they have to meet. If it's vacant for 60 days, they have to meet certain requirements. And then if it's 90 or more, they have to meet those requirements. And so if we put those in place, like I said, it gives staff the tools. And I've spoken with Ms. Van Leeuwen, and maybe she would like to elaborate a little bit, but it is something that would give staff those tools to be able to go out. Right now, we do have a property standards bylaw, but it's not strong enough. It doesn't have the teeth to allow them to go in and do what they need to do. And this would allow them to do that.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in support of the motion. It's something that's been needed for a while. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Van Leeuwen. In terms of our current property standards bylaw, which Councilor Maracas, confirmed that it didn't have the teeth necessary to implement what we'd like. Can you expand on what powers we do have under our current bylaw, and what this new potential bylaw proposes, what the difference would be?
Ms. Van Leeuwen, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our current property standards bylaw does have some provisions for vacant buildings that kick in after 90 days of vacancy, that require disconnection of services, boarding of the windows to prevent unlawful entry into the buildings. Pretty much that's it. And we do have some provisions in our property standards bylaw as well for heritage buildings. So there is some provisions where there are heritage attributes that have higher standards within our property standards bylaw. So that was something that we brought in probably 2 or 3 years ago. In terms of these other bylaws that Councillor Maracas has stated that are currently in existence in Hamilton, Welland, Bradford, Winnipeg, Toronto, I'd have to review to see what other provisions are contained within those bylaws that would give us additional powers.
Councillor?
Yeah, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Van Leeuwen, is it possible for us to receive compensation for the cleanup and maintenance? Is there something that we can get back from the property owner?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there may be some provisions in the Municipal Act. Our current property standards bylaw is passed under the Building Code Act. The Building Code Act has specific, if we issue orders, emergency orders for unsafe buildings, it allows us to go in and do some work and add that as a lien on the property. But I'm not certain these other bylaws that are referred to in this motion, if the powers are coming from the Municipal Act, which may be slightly different, and allowing us to go in, do some work, and then add to property taxes, is something that we would have to review as part of this report back and process.
Thank you. And given the number of derelict buildings that we do have, I mean, we don't have as many as other municipalities, but we do have our share. And it's our responsibility to keep all the properties safe and looking nice. And I think any motion to enhance our current or create a new bylaw that will give staff in the town more authority and more teeth is welcome. And so I would support the motion.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Peary Abel Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand this from a property standards point of view. That makes sense to me. My concern with this, when we're talking about vacant and derelict buildings, does it pertain to one or the other? Because there are some instances where homes may be vacant, and if the homes are well kept, we know that homes, there's speculation going around in the housing market, and there is talk around imposing a tax on people who have vacant homes that are sitting empty, but they might be clean on the inside. There's been conversations from a real estate perspective about imposing a tax. I've heard, 1.5% of the value of the home per year. Is that something that would be looked at through this? Is that something we can look at, or is this really just for properties that are both vacant and derelict?
Is that to Ms. Van Leeuwen or Councillor Maracas?
I just want an answer.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with respect to imposing a tax, Perhaps the treasurer could weigh in on this, as I'm not certain. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll just add in, if that wasn't the intention, but if that's something that council would like to look at, I would have no problem moving forward with that.
I just wanted to make sure that, we were looking at this from all perspectives and what kind of bylaw we'd be getting back. So to hear that we're not moving forward with that at this point in time, I understand. I just wanted to ask.
Mr. Elliott, do you have any comment?
Certainly. At the last updating of our DC bylaw, and I was just emailing Ms. Van Leeuwen, we collectively added a clause that harmonized our bylaw with the Region of York, and that was to allow a longer period of a DC credit for demolitions, where the demolition was ordered by council because it was a derelict building. And this has started in other municipalities where the building stays there for the developer to serve as a DC credit. It's worth $65,000 or something in situ as a DC credit. If it comes down, a clock starts to run. And so we created a clause where that building could come down and the clock would be allowed to run a little longer before it expires. And so that was intended to encourage these buildings to come down when they need to. But I think a wholesome look at this whole issue needs to be taken, and I'd be happy to work with Ms. Van Leeuwen and the group to coordinate that.
Councillor Perry? Councillor Abel, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I am in support of this. I tabled a notice of motion last term to address the vacant buildings and the blight that they present on our community, especially in our downtown. And through you, Mr. Mayor, was imposing a tax where it would escalate the longer it was vacant. Just as Councillor Marakis, some sort of initiative for absentee owners to take note that this is unacceptable. Their tax would be increased, and the longer it went, the more the tax would go up, and it was something I read about that was in other municipalities. However, Mr. Elliott did his investigation, and he told me enforcing a bylaw of that nature would not be allowed under our municipal act, or perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, I could just ask for clarification.
Mr. Elliott, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, you're correct. In Ontario, there's no legislation to allow for a special tax on a specific unit or specific dwelling because of its condition. It's assessed as residential, whatever its assessed value at, which might reflect its derelict condition. They still pay the same rate of tax as every other property in Ontario, in the jurisdiction.
And so that has to be clear. However, for one that is not occupied and is left vacant and derelict, is there a way of imposing a tax on that? Is that addressed? Could you speak to that, Mr. Elliott?
No, sir. There is not an availability for any kind of special levy based on its occupancy or non-occupancy, its condition, or otherwise. It's assessed by municipal act or by the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation into one of multiple categories of property. Its value is assigned, and we levy a tax against it. And we can't levy any premiums or surcharges on any particular class of property other than allowed in the act, and this one is not.
So is there going to be an issue with a bylaw of this nature that Councilor Marakis is putting forward? Because it is another bylaw, and it speaks specifically to a building, but this building is vacant, much the same way as what I was asking about. Through Mr. Mayor, would...
Mr. Serio, perhaps, or Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mayor Daw. To me, it's something that we'd have to look into. If other municipalities have this, it'd be interesting to see what they've worded. And it's, I would say it would, I would suggest it also depends on what the actual bylaw says. But for me, this is something that we'd have to look into based on this notice of motion.
Because nothing grabs the attention of a landlord when he starts having to pay more money. So, and that's really what we're trying to do with this, is to draw the attention of the landowner that leaving a building in a derelict and unkept way is not acceptable by our property standards, nor is it reflective of our community, or is it reflective of our strategy to attract and retain businesses. And so we've had the chamber speak to this, we've had businesses speak to it, we've had residents speak to it, and although my idea did fail, I'm in favor of supporting anything that will address this situation.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Dodd. Just to pick up on that, through you to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, I'm just sort of remembering back to the whole conversation that we had last term about it. But while we cannot increase it, and I hear you clearly on that, I do believe, though, that for vacant commercial owners, they can apply to get some sort of reduction in their taxes. Is that not correct?
Mr. Elliott.
That's correct. The vacant commercial rebate is available for those properties that are commercially available for lease, are actively being marketed as for lease, but are not just empty space at the back of the warehouse that I'm just holding on to for myself. You don't get a credit for that. It has to be segregated, marketable, and in fact on the market for lease to get a credit for vacant space.
Yeah, and that's how I sort of remembered it. So it was interesting that, yeah, I can go one way, but not the other. But
So a derelict building that is not on the market would
Yes.
not qualify for a reduction.
just the vacant ones, for sure. Appreciate the clarification. Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, just a couple quick questions. The motion in front of us calls for you to bring forward a bylaw, but do you also see you bringing forth a report at the same time as that bylaw to provide some context or background information for members of council?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. There'll be a report that will provide some background and the research that we're going to need to research the legislation and the ability that we have to bring forward these additional powers and provisions within a bylaw. So absolutely, there'll be a report.
Great, because I think, you know, a bylaw is great, but one of the things we always want to know is, you know, how easy is it going to be to enforce? And so perhaps in that report, you may just be able to highlight some of the challenges, if any, that other municipalities or even us could have to the enforcement of the bylaw. I just think it'd be good information to have.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms. Van Leeuwen, before I go around a second time here, you and I have had a couple of conversations about some ongoing construction projects in Aurora that take years, and that we have no real way of getting these people to complete as long as there is some kind of progress that's being made on it. So in the report, if you could include something around that, I think it would be beneficial for just general knowledge for us as to how that happens, why it happens, because I've had a couple of calls just in the last week of a particular property in the south end of town that's taken forever to come to fruition. So, and I'm sure that other people sitting around the table have had those same calls, so I think that would be beneficial for us to be aware of that. Thank you. I've got Councillor Dahl.
Thank you, Mayor Dodd. My question is for Ms. Van Leeuwen. Just briefly, not to upset the timelines that are set out in this motion, you mentioned to Councillor Thompson that you will be providing a report, but at the same time as the bylaw that's going to be presented. Is it possible that we could see that report in advance of the bylaw coming forward, and just and for council to be able to digest some of the policy changes? We've had a lot of questions from different councillors about many different items that's going to go into this. There's going to be a ton of research. So I don't know if it makes sense to get that report back even a couple of weeks ahead of time just to digest some of the information. But if you have thoughts on that, provide that to council.
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. I can bring back a report in the first quarter of 2017, followed by the bylaw, should we proceed, in the second quarter of 2017, to give some context and the legislative framework and answer some of the questions that have been raised today.
That would be excellent if that's the case. That would be fine by me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Maracus, last word to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was just going to give an example of one, and just to kind of give everyone a sense of what can be done. So, you know, Cornwall, for instance, within their vacant building bylaw, they have reinforced increased administration fees as a recovery mechanism to cover increased enforcement expenditures where the property owner has ignored a directive They board up openings of all levels above the ground floor. Owners are to retain services to monitor the building on a bi-weekly basis. And property owners' legal responsibility is basically for all that. And then we can also establish, they have established a maximum fines that exceed the 5,000 Provincial Offences Act, which is maximum right now. So, there's a lot of things that we can put in there that we don't have. Like I said, that gives us the teeth to encourage these absentee land owners, landlords, to step up to the plate and make sure that our town looks beautiful at the end of the day, and that these storefronts, residential properties don't stay vacant and don't become derelict. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we want. We don't want them to become derelict. If they stay vacant for a little bit of time, that's understandable. We just don't want it to get to the point where they become an eyesore to the community. And, they bring in things such as crime, bring in, health risks and issues, possible fire issues. And those are the things we're trying to avoid by long-term vacant and becoming derelict. So, I think getting a report, I'm all for that. And I expected nothing less than to get a report with it. And so I look forward to it and look forward to moving forward and taking some action.
Thank you, Councillor. Calling the vote then, all in favor? Contrary, that's carried as well unanimously, Madam Clerk. Last one, Councillor April.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move as is.
Second. Councillor Rackus. Councillor April.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, we do employ parking restrictions, and we have a very sensitive area. Often when we do, unaware that we may be creating some difficulties, or we may have to readdress the situation. None comes to mind more so than the town park, and then the people that were parking around the town park, and now we've employed a wider range. At one of the furthest corners, at Kennedy and Yonge Street, is the Kennedy Medical Center, which has been operating and serving our community for over 20 years. I think it's around 23 years. And they have 50 parking spaces, but like most facilities in our medical world, they are maxed, and people rely on them. And often this is a post-diagnostic center, which, if I understand correctly, is you've gone to a doctor and now he says you need some tests. So you may have to get some blood work, some x-rays, some physio, and it's that kind of a building. I have attended it, and many are infirmed, elderly, and have great challenges. So the owner of the medical facility has advised me that the new parking restrictions has imposed a great hardship on the operation. He has instructed his able staff, while they do a shift, to park on Kennedy and parts of Gurnett, and to allow the 50 spots for the people that really require it. If they are required to, and now they're getting ticketed. So he's appealed to me for council to consider allowance for the staff, because what if they park in their parking spaces, that means people that can use it for 3 hours would be the ones that have the difficulties, and they would be using walkers and canes and et cetera, and would have to walk up the slope and off the street. So as a matter of courtesy, he's instructed his staff to park in those spots so that the flat parking spaces close to the medical center could be used. So I have worked with Director Van Leeuwen on this, and to see if I could craft it and capture the essence of goodwill and courtesy to extend allowances by way of permit to the staff in the building to park for greater than 3 hours while they do the shift on the streets, as they have for the last 20 years. It is far enough away from the GO station. I don't think it will take or have any effect on the enforcement that we've employed there. So my notice is basically asking that staff make allowances for parking permits to be issued to the medical center staff and technicians. And that's basically the gist.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. I have Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not in favor of this for a few different reasons. The first is that we're responding to one-off siloed reductions in planning with one-off additions in planning, and we're not looking at this from a holistic point of view. We're not looking at this from any sort of plan process. We're just sort of cherry picking here that we don't want people parking now. We've created a problem, so we're cherry picking somewhere else, saying that we do want people to be parking there, but not everybody should be able to park there. Only certain staff members from a certain building should be allowed to park there. And I don't think that's how we. I don't think that's how if we're doing our job properly, this isn't the way that we're supposed to be doing it. And I don't think that we should be looking at these one side at a time. So that's one reason that I am opposed to it. If we want to look at this from at the traffic committee that's going to be starting up, I think that makes sense to look at it holistically, but not as a one-off. The other question I have, this will be to Ms. Desario, bonusing. We are giving special provisions to one business where we have instituted paid parking passes, and now we are holistically looking at one business and people who work at this one property, and we're saying you don't have to pay the same fees that we are requiring our own residents to be paying for. Is there a concern around bonusing, or am I wrong to be concerned about that?
Mr. Sarah?
Through you, Mayor Daw, to Councillor Perry. So I don't know all the provisions on bonusing, but you raise a good point. And if there is an issue, then yes, other people will be making that issue.
So I think those are my two major concerns. The first around, making sure that we do this properly. And then the second around whether or not we're doing something that we're even allowed to do. Because if we're doing something that falls in line with bonusing, it's something that's being done outside of the Municipal Act and as such, illegal.
Other speakers, please. Well, then I'll get a couple of comments because I don't really have an issue with providing parking for the businesses. You might recall that, I guess about a month ago, and I think I was sitting over on this side, and I asked Ms. Van Leeuwen when the bylaw came up, has anybody talked to any of the businesses in the area? And we hadn't. That was before. We hadn't talked to the school. We hadn't talked to anybody else, but we're imposing these restrictions. And I understand that while I was on vacation, we turned down the opportunity to have a holistic look at our parking issues in town. So we're piecemealing it, and we're reacting to specific issues without coming up with an overall plan that's going to address all the issues. I had a rather, safe to say, testy exchange with a resident on the phone the other day who got a parking ticket because he was parked at the GO station, or close to the GO station. And he wanted to know why the work trucks for the people who are building the houses over at his end of town don't get tickets for parking all day long. So we are very much setting double standards, and that's come up at the council a couple of times. So I think that, and this goes through, which again, I don't really have an issue because I've been to that medical clinic, and I think they've got 6 doctors, a dentist, a physiotherapy, the blood lab, and some other things going on. They have a lot of people going through that area, so I can understand the parking issues. And Cobblestone Lodge is right there, and a couple of other things going on. But someone else will come up. Same thing's happening with speed bumps. We're not being holistic in how we look at speed bumps, speed cushions, whatever we want to control it. So, I'm getting people who call up from Pedersen because of speed issues. So we have to start looking at things holistically, and we have to stop reacting to individual items because we're just going to keep on going through that process. So I will support this, Councillor Abel. I am quite ambivalent, to be frank. I quite appreciate Councillor Perry's point of view. And I think we have to step back and look at this, how we're going to address these issues overall. Other speakers, please. Councillor Thompson.
You know, I share I guess the two main concerns that have been brought up. One is that this is just identifying one particular business. As we saw when we first implemented the parking restrictions, the minute we touched upon one street, other streets came. And so I'm quite certain that other businesses, maybe even the library, because I know their staff, they're challenged with parking in their park. They have to park elsewhere as well, so they'll come as well. So, you know, we could see many businesses come asking for the same sort of provisions as is included there. So I guess my question through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, you know, it talks about making allowances for parking permits to be issued to the staff and technicians. How do you see it working logistically?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we would obtain a list from the medical center in terms of, you know, just confirming the numbers and the plates, so vehicle make and plate. We would probably issue some dash permits to which they'd place on their dashboard, and our bylaw officers would be looking for that when they're doing enforcement in the area.
Appreciate that. And I guess it would just be Monday to Friday, since part of this is being driven by the GO system, or do you see it being available 7 days a week?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the parking restriction that we recently implemented was a 3-hour restriction Monday to Friday during the day. So this is what has created this issue.
Thank you. And I think the only other issue I have really is it talks about doing it at no cost. Well, I mean, we're charging residents around Town Park $400 to park at Town Park for the cost of the year. And so if I was one of those residents, I think I would be, you know, noticeably upset that just a few blocks away the town is making special provisions, and all of a sudden then I'm feeling, well, you know, why them and not me? I know that when we first did it, we had but we had some of those residents who were paying to speak to us, and that was the policy, that was what we put into place. So, you know, I think that if we're going to make parking permits, that, you know, we got to have the same system for both. Either everybody pays or nobody pays. And so, I have an issue with the fact that for this particular one, it's no cost. And if other businesses come, it may be no cost for them as well. So I think, you know, to the mayor's comments, I think you got to look at it from the big picture.
Other speakers, please. Councilor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen. Would the permit allow them to park anywhere within the restricted area, or would it be restricted to just a certain street?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to have a conversation perhaps with the staff at the medical center to understand where they're currently parking, because it's my understanding that they have been parking on the street, and then when we implemented the 3-hour restriction, it created some issues. So I want to understand where the boundaries of that is, how many cars we're talking about, but I think in close proximity to the medical center would make sense.
Okay, yeah, I share some of the same concerns. I'm just wondering, through you to maybe Councillor Abel, if you could answer this, is this something that you would like to see happen right away, or would this be something that maybe, as Councillor Perry has suggested, that if it went to the Traffic Advisory Committee when it went up for some discussion and look at it from a bigger picture point of view, would that still work, or are you looking to get this done as soon as possible? Councillor.
I would look at it as soon as possible, because the people that are affected are the ones that are most vulnerable. So we're going to be moving these people further away, and it's more of an arduous journey. You can paint it any way you want it. I'm just addressing the needs of those that are most vulnerable. It is within our council's discretion to allow a small exception of perhaps, I imagine, 7 to 9 parking spots as identified right on Kennedy and a couple on Gurnett. It's very simple. If you had an elderly a parent that was going there for quarterly visits, and then they came home and said they had a fall because they had to walk up the slope on Kennedy in the winter this year because the staff were parking there, you might feel a little empathy for them. That's all I'm doing. The reason we put it in there was to stop commuters from parking there, not to cast are vulnerable out onto the road. I thought it was fairly straightforward. I can appreciate some of the reservations. You know, some will just make reasons why they don't want to support something. I'm trying to address a situation for people that I have a concern for, and I think our community has a concern for, and it's nothing more than that. The fact that people can park on Wellington all day long, which is one of our busiest streets, while those people do businesses, is striking. It's a very busy spot. They have businesses. You know, if I was a GO commuter, I'd be parking on Wellington. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but you know, this is far enough away from the area. It's very self-explanatory. Mr. Mayor, I'll just ask for a recorded vote too, please.
Thank you, sir.
Do I still have the floor?
I'm sorry?
Do I still have the floor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I can see the need for it, and for sure, I don't want any elderly or people, that have, needs or any issues to hurt themselves or fall or anything like that. I don't think any of us want to see any of that happen. So I think we would all be in favor of this. I just think that some of us are looking at, like we need to, instead of doing it one at a time, and not to say that I won't agree to this at this moment. I just do have some of those concerns also, and I think that the no cost kind of rubs me the same way as it does with what Councillor Thompson mentioned, is that we're charging the residents at the town park to pay for their permit. Maybe as a overall approach, maybe we look at allowing all the businesses within the downtown core to be able to validate parking with, on the streets for their customers. Maybe that's something to look at, right? I'm, throwing it out there. And these are the types of things I think that would help if we looked at that overall approach. I think if we can throw in the cost, I think I could be agreeable to this at this time.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I listen to everyone speak, I believe that everyone is correct from their perspective. All the comments, all the reasons and rationale for their perspective is absolutely correct. However, I can't get this image. I have this image of one big gauze pad that's attempting to solve one issue or one sore, and now that other issues have come up, now we're putting Band-Aids on it. My concern is that we're digging ourselves deeper into other questions. As Councillor Peary said, other businesses might pop up and want certain things. Councillor Thompson talked about fees, and we do need to have, as Councillor Peary said, a holistic approach, and as the Mayor said as well. And I can't help wonder whether we just look. It's not too late to, instead of looking at putting an overlay solution to this in terms of a Band-Aid, that we look at the original solution in terms of the borders or the boundaries around our parking restriction, and maybe take a relook at that to see whether those boundaries still make sense now that we've had the first glance of some of the issues that could arise. Are there other businesses within this perimeter that we need to look at? Are GO train parkers really using certain streets? I think now would be a good time to actually kind of relook at that instead of adding Band-Aid after another Band-Aid. Because even though a short-term solution is desirable, if we can get something back within a reasonable amount of time so that a greater population is appeased, I think that might be more rational solution than putting one Band-Aid after another. So those are my thoughts. The motion as it is with the good intentions that it has, I don't think I can support it as is. if there are others who are willing to look, whether it's be in the form of when the traffic review board comes up, I'm not sure when that is coming up, or whether we have staff re-look at the perimeters of the original parking restriction area. I'd rather go with one of those two options than to have a short-term solution at this time.
Councillor Tom, and then back to Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Daw, and I completely agree with Councillor Kim and the perspective that he just provided. I think no one here is looking to cast people out to any unwanted area for parking. I mean, I use this, my dentist is at this building. I understand that it's always busy, there's always parking issues, I get that. But I agree that we did implement the parking restrictions to solve the problem of the GO commuters, and it certainly is causing some unintended consequences. But I think to solve those unintended consequences, we really do have to take a bird's eye view and make sure that we're not just putting a Band-Aid, as Councillor Kim mentioned, on one area just to have that same situation crop up at another area. And I agree with Councillor Thompson. Yeah, I mean, no cost will go over not well with residents who pay $400 a year at Town Park, especially when it's a business that's getting it for free and residents have to pay $400 out of their own pocket. I think, again, if we're going to make that change, we should make it consistent across the board. If there's going to be allowances for parking permits, then we have to look at the whole area. And I mean, there's other options perhaps as well, maybe not specific to parking passes, but perhaps leasing some of the spaces out directly in front of the building directly to the building. So there's signage saying only patrons of X, Y, and Z can park here. I don't know, there's lots of options. So for me, I think looking at it from a bird's eye view and some sort of a review of that parking situation that we've implemented at around Town Park and that neighborhood around it would be much more desirable, especially if we can get that done faster. So I agree with Councillor Kim. As it's set out right now, I won't be supporting it.
Thank you. Just before I go to Councillor Thompson for a second time, Ms. Van Loon, could you please confirm the price of the parking pass at Town Park?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's for 6 months, it's $200 first. So for a full year, it would be $400.
Thank you very much.
And I can tell you that we currently have a wait list.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Berry, second time.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. If I can get some clarification, Councillor Abel's referred to the most vulnerable a few times and drawn a picture of the elderly walking through the snow. So perhaps through you to Mr. Abel, Councillor Abel, sorry. Is the parking permits for the most vulnerable or is it for the staff?
Councillor.
For the staff.
Thank you. Councillor Abel. Thompson, pardon me.
Thank you. And so that's where I was getting at, is that, we've said in the past that there is parking in other areas of downtown. It may necessitate staff walking a block or two. I'm not sure if that's been explored. Have those conversations happened with the owners of those businesses about having their staff at one of the nearby lots and having them walk? Because I certainly don't want to put out the most vulnerable, as Councillor Abel put it, but really we're talking about staff parking. You look at South Lake Hospital, as far as I know, and the mayor sits on the board, he's better able to identify than I am, but I don't think staff have parking too close to the hospital. It's all reserved for those who utilize the hospital. Staff park farther away, and they have to walk, and that's just the way it is. And that's why I was making that point about other businesses in downtown. As far as I know, I think library staff park far away, and they have to walk. Same sort of issues. Other businesses have dealt with it that way, whereby their staff, unfortunately, have to park farther away and walk. And so really, we're not talking about the most vulnerable here, we're talking about staff. And so, I think, again, it comes down to that cost issue as well.
Councillor Perry.
I will state, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't going to call it question of privilege, but I do take offense to the picture drawing that where anybody who's opposed to this is in favor of having elderly citizens fall down on the ground. My grandmother does use the facility on a quarterly basis. So Councillor Abel's argument, it like the seniors he's talking about, falls flat on its face. If we're thinking about really fixing this issue, Mr. Mayor, what we would be doing is putting parking spots designated for people with disabilities on site, so that people who really do need to use the parking close to the facility can do that. Through you to Ms. Van Leeuwen, Tasha, are people allowed to park for 3 hours?
Ms. Van Leeuwen?
On the street, yes, they are, through you, Mr.
So
Chair.
if, you know, if you're going in to get your blood work done, I see no problem with parking on the street. And if you are somebody who seriously does need help from a mobility perspective, maybe there should be some extra emphasis put on site that only the people who are parking there can use permitted, accessible parking spaces. There are different ways to go about this. My biggest issue, and there were two, the first was that we're looking at this piecemeal, but the second is that it might be illegal the way it's phrased. So before we discuss this anymore, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to refer this back to staff to look at the bonusing provisions and to see if this even makes sense from a legal standpoint.
Is that a motion to refer?
That is a motion to refer.
No. Motion to refer takes. Yeah, no, but a motion to refer.
You say, if they say that, I've got people in queue that I'd like to refer.
But, Madam Clerk?
to make that exception.
Right, but motion to refer is, if it gets seconded, it's on the table.
Mr. Mayor, I had my hand up in queue before the referral.
And I've got.
And I've heard you say
I've also got
before,
Councilor Maracas.
so then you would
So-
listen to those before you would ask for the referral, as you have done in the past. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councilor, I will take the motion to refer. If there's a second. If there's no second, then we'll go back.
That's fine, if there's none.
Okay.
Okay.
Councilor Thompson, seconding the motion to refer back to staff with respect to speaking to the, yeah, debatable. Motion to refer, yeah. Speaking to the motion to refer. Councilor Maracas, Councilor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure how Councillor Perry feels about this, but I would like to see it referred to the committee when it's up and running. I don't know if you want to add that in, staff and to the committee, or
I mean, I think ultimately, if we're going to look at this holistically, that's what we would do. Before we even, you know, have a committee look at it, whether or not we're going to be giving away free parking spots to employees, I think the legality issue is probably a bigger one.
the only reason I suggest that is because I agree with you. It would be good for us to get that point of view. But if staff does come up with that point of view, I would prefer to see that go to the committee with that aspect, and then the committee's point of view come back to us. And so that's all. If we could, I don't know if it could be worded in that type of way, or if Councilor Perry's fine with that, then.
We don't, at this point, we don't have a committee.
No, and I understand we don't have a committee, but I mean, are we not on, have we not put out for the committee for members?
To you, Mr. Mayor, if I might, I'm not sure that the committee's mandate would include making a ruling on bonusing or advice on bonusing, so I don't know that that would be the work of the committee. If I understand Councillor Perry's deferral, it's for an opinion from staff on the bonusing aspect only, and then going forward. So I really don't think that it would belong to that committee.
Okay, and that's fine, and I wouldn't expect them to look at that aspect of it. I just thought that that would be useful information for them, because I think that eventually we're going to get that report, and then we're going to say, well, let's just send it to the committee when they're up and running. So that's the only reason I'm saying the word. But that's fine. We'll get the report from staff and go from there.
Councilor Abel, Councilor Thompson. To the motion to refer.
I know everyone has stuck to the referral so far, so I'll do the same, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
If we're referring on bonusing, I would also like to include the fact that people don't pay for parking in this town except in one certain area of town. I mean, everywhere else we don't pay for our parking on the street or for residents. And at no cost as well. There's only one spot we really permit, it's right around the town park. So the fact that it's been phrased as bonusing, in my opinion, is kind of a very targeted sort of specific sort of area, when I think the residents of Aurora enjoy free parking. All the businesses do, except in this one little area here. And so as far as referring this to a committee, I mean, we could temporarily allow this And then it could be addressed more fully and at the traffic advisory and then in other parking areas as well. To me, it's just like if you're on a bus and an elderly comes in, you would say, you know what, I would give you this seat. I mean, I don't want to see you jostled around in the bus, but I'm going to wait until I go to an advisory committee before I actually offer you that seat. We have that discretion. That is, to refer it is not addressing it. And I would just appreciate just dealing with what it is. It's maybe 6 or 7 parking spots at the corner of our parking restricted area. Very simply, it's just as a courtesy to those people that have asked for that.
Councillor Thompson.
Just quickly through to Ms. Van Leeuwen, has anybody from the Kennedy Medical Center contacted you or the bylaw department to ask for and had any conversations around this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not me directly. I'd have to check with the manager of bylaw to respond to whether or not they've contacted any staff.
Councillor. Any of the speakers to the motion to refer? Calling the vote on the motion to refer this item to staff. All in favor, hands high, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? Motion carries. Motion to refer carries. The regional report. Can you put that on the floor, please? Councillor Tom, thank you very much. Second. Councillor Perry, comments or questions on the regional report? Understanding that I was enjoying a sidewalk cafe in Paris when this was happening. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't necessarily have a question about this specific regional report. However, I did notice that in this week's agenda, there is a report with regards to regional governance. Okay. Is it possible for you to supplement the next regional report to give us more of a detailed understanding of what transpired with regards to the conversations at the region level with regards to that topic when it comes up, I think, at Committee of the Whole this week?
Yes, Thursday.
Since it's very specific to Aurora. Thanks.
Okay. Can do that. Any other comments or questions on the regional report? All in favor? Contrary? That is carried. Thank you very much. New business, general information. Councillor Perry, may I start with you, sir?
So, Mr. Mayor, again, I apologize for not having a little bit of a report or some information about the FCM board meeting at the start of the meeting. I did go through and I've highlighted, I think, the 3 most important things from the FCM board meeting. The first is there was an announcement made by Jean-Yves Duclos about the federal government, Minister Duclos, about the federal government getting back into housing and bringing forward a new national housing strategy. It's something that we've been missing for a long time. The second big announcement that was made at the board meeting with regards to wastewater and water infrastructure, there used to be, in the last round of funding from the federal government, a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 funding agreement. It was announced that with regards to Ontario, the federal government is going to be kicking in 50% of water and wastewater infrastructure, and that the provincial and municipal governments are going to be falling in line at 25% each. And the last one, which I think is always important, I have the pleasure of sitting on the committee which really tries to get more women involved in municipal politics, because across Canada there is not enough diversity. So there is an initiative being put forward, the Diverse Voices for Change. It's funded over 3 years, and it's a $500,000 program over those 5 years to help increase the number of women who are participating in local government. So that's a really exciting initiative that I look forward to working on over the next year. So those, I think, are the 3 highlights from the last board meeting.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Kim.
I'm good, thank you.
Councillor Tom. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just on our town website under committees and agendas and minutes, and there's a note there when you go to the archives that they are under construction They show 2015, 2014, and that's been the case for a number of months. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just wondering if someone could sort of adjust that so I could get an idea of when that might be remedied.
Madam Clerk.
So under the new software system that we have recently acquired, we will be able to transfer all of that information into the system so that people can keyword search it, and it will meet all of the accessibility requirements, which I think was probably the delay in not reposting that, is that it probably didn't meet the requirements to be posted on the website as it was.
Councillor?
Is there a time that we might be looking for?
I suspect by the new year, early new year.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one. October 3rd, we all received the AMO report highlighting the summary of the September 2016 board meeting. And it's a similar summary as Councillor Perry brings forward to us as far from FCM. And so, I'm going through the report, and I'm not sure how many of you actually went through the report. And, there's many things that they discussed, federal infrastructure, phase 2 design, energy matters, expanding medical services, Ontario's changing workplaces, review interim report to the Minister of Labor, 2015 federal gas tax fund, national housing strategy, workplace safety, health task force, federal consultation on national accessibility legislation, and LAS updates. The one thing that I see missing that many municipalities within this province have been advocating for, and considering that AIM was supposed to advocate on behalf of the municipalities, is OMB reform. And considering that the consultation paper has been put out and the review is happening, I would like to think that the board would have actually stepped up and would have been discussing this matter, as it's important right across the province. And, and I remember being at AMO this summer, and it's just Councillor Thompson, yourself, Councillor Abel, Councillor Kim, we were all there, and we're watching the elections of the board, and every single one of them spoke about how important OMB reform is and how important it is for them to advocate on our behalf because it's such an important issue right across the province. Yet, their first board meeting, they're not even talking about it. So I'm just wondering, maybe if we can send a written letter to the Executive Director, Pat Vanini, and ask her for a response on why the board did not speak about this specific issue, because it is such an important topic. And considering, like I said, that they're supposed to be, their job is to advocate on behalf of the municipalities for what's important to us. And yet, it's nowhere to be seen. So I'd like to get some kind of response from AMO on why it wasn't discussed.
Madam Clerk, what's the best way to handle that? Or Mr. CAO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's acceptable to council, I'll contact the executive director and get an update as to when it's on the next agenda and why it wasn't on this one.
And that'd be great, and I would just ask that if we could possibly have a written response come back to us, if that's possible.
Anything else? Councillor Abel, you had something else?
I was just going to say that Mayor Van Bynen was elected, so I mean, maybe a phone call to him might, he should be advocating on our behalf, and he's right next to us, so that was all I was going to suggest. Thank you, though, very much for the wholesome rundown of what happened there. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor. And just quickly, we had the 15th annual Mayor's Golf Tournament 2 weeks ago. Time flies when you're having fun. We raised $80,000 for local charities in our community. So a great big thank you to all the supporters who allow us to do that. It's really a great day, and we appreciate the opportunity to be able to contribute to some of the needy folks in our community. So thank you very much. Bylaws. We have 3. Someone put those on the floor, please. Councillor Tom, thank you. Second, Councillor Thompson. Comments or questions? All in favor? Contrary? That is carried. Confirming bylaw, please. Councillor Peary, Councillor Kim, all in favor? Contrary? That is carried. And last but not least, motion to adjourn. Councillor Marcus, Councillor Abel, all in favor? Contrary? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff.